You have to work together with people that you trust because it's illegal to do what people are doing here.
So this is how the so-called union breaks down. And of course, there are many exceptions to this, but this is the typical setup. First, you have a home or landowner. He doesn't take on much responsibility. He is simply the legitimate owner of where the grow operation will take place. All he has to do is pick up a briefcase every 3 months and pay off his mortgage. His hands are clean because he can claim ignorance if the grow operation is busted. Oh, I'm sorry, officer. I didn't know they were growing marijuana there. Then you have his 50-50 partner, the contractor, who will provide the equipment and hire the grower or grow himself. The grower is known as the fall guy. Why the name? Because that's exactly what he is. If the operation is busted, he takes the fall. Once the crop is matured, clippers are then hired. They prep the weed for distribution by cutting away the excess leaves and stems. What a lot of people don't understand is a part of the marijuana plant that people smoke is the bud, which in essence is the plant's flower. It's not the leaves. Clippers are generally hired on an hourly wage starting around $20. Tax-free, of course. Once the marijuana is ready, in steps the weed broker. He's not always required, but sometimes the partner with the equipment needs a broker to buy his product and then sell it for him. In the event that a broker is required, it usually means the weed is headed south to the United States. In that case, the broker will buy the pot for somewhere between $1,800 and $2,000 a pound. He'll then hire a border jumper, a risk taker, someone who has the balls and hopefully the wits to get the product over the border. Some of the most common ways? The border jumper's fee varies with each trip, but they're always well paid. Once the product has reached the broker's U.S. connection, it will earn about $3,000 a pound. The farther south it goes, the more it makes. If it manages to make it all the way out east to areas like New York, the price is driven even higher, somewhere between $3,500 and $6,000 a pound. Stricter laws demand higher prices and in turn provide more profits. In Miami, 7 to 8 pounds of BC bud will trade for 1 kilo of pure yayo. Cocaine. That in turn makes its way back up to Canada. And sells for anywhere from $30,000 to $35,000 a key. If the marijuana manages to stay in the province, it will usually sell for around $1,800 to $2,000 a pound, depending on how flooded the market is. This is just the tip of the iceberg. The union embodies a slew of businesses and services, generating profits both directly and indirectly for the province. Some know they are involved and others choose not to acknowledge the benefits they gain from it. Carpenters build tables, rooms, sheds, and anything else that's needed for a grow show.
Brand new homes are being built expressly for the purpose of housing a marijuana grow operation.
Electricians set up lights, wire the electrical components, divert power if necessary. Hardware stores provide construction materials to build rooms and grow operation structures. Hydroponic stores supply lights, nutrients, soil, and other equipment needed to grow. Seed sellers provide, well, seeds. Clone growers create clones from other marijuana plants to aid in quicker grow cycles. Real estate agencies market houses to growers, unknowingly, but they profit all the same. There are some realtors, though, who are directly involved in the union and will actually cater to growers' needs, finding houses in secluded areas with big basements and power that can be spliced and stolen. Mortgage brokers and lease brokers who help growers with poor credit get the houses they need to start up. Banks who have minimal security to prevent illegal money from being deposited. The way it works now is deposits over $3,000 are sometimes questioned but are left up to the teller to decide whether the deposit is suspicious. If they believe it is, they may put a note on the account. It isn't until a $10,000 deposit that a mandatory FCAC form is filled out and sent away. But it is possible for $9,999 deposits to go through with little question. Oh, you sold some motorbikes. Cool. Oh, you sold your boat. Neat. Thanks for the business. You get the point. Lawyers and law firms provide counseling on how to make grow money legit. They help set up and incorporate LTD companies and holding companies to launder money. They also provide legal counsel to keep busted growers out of jail. The electric company who makes money off of enlarged electric bills due to excess lights. The only time they seem to get involved is when they think someone is stealing the power. Law enforcement receives budgets to fight the cultivation. They create special task forces like the Green Team to specifically target marijuana. Canadians spend $300 to $500 million annually on law enforcement and the justice system to enforce marijuana laws. Police also receive the benefits of seizing growers' and dealers' assets. And last, but definitely not least, everyday businesses. Bars, restaurants, clothing stores, boat dealerships, car dealerships. The money funneled indirectly through various everyday businesses. Growers and dealers like to spend money on everything.
These growers, after they crop out, it's like they won the lottery.
You can tell the ones who are selling it. The more they sell, the more bling bling they have on them.
Do you think they just hold it themselves and tuck it away somewhere? No, they buy houses, they buy cars, they buy boats.
They'll purchase restaurants, they'll purchase, whatever they're into.
Maybe that's why we got busted. We got too carried away.
You can tell yourself you're not going to let it go to your head, but I said the same thing. But when the money comes in so easy, you get accustomed to that lifestyle, and before you know it, you become a steamer, you become a hot rod.
And that's what it comes down to. Yes, organized crime moves a majority of the product once it's available on the market. But there aren't a lot of bikers out there watering plants. It's mom-and-pop operations, it's young guys who see opportunity.
It's not easy to make that type of money doing anything, especially if you've been going to school for, the past 4 years and you see this random other guy, watering plants in his basement coming out of it with an extreme amount of money.
And you're saying you have your degree?
Yeah.
And then you're in the...
Yeah, I made the choice to put that aside and start growing weed. I could be making $33 an hour, which is a great wage, but really, why would I want to do that when I have the knowledge to make in a whole year in 2 months?
What have we learned so far? Well, one, the prohibition hasn't reduced the demand, and it certainly hasn't reduced the supply. Two, it's a steady source of revenue for organized crime, which in turn attracts young people because the money is so easy. And three, being an underground market actually creates crime and violence. And yet, the only one paying the costs for all of this are the taxpayers, people like you and me. Even further, this whole deal is over a drug that seems to pose no more of a threat than the substances we already regulate. At the very least, why isn't this up for debate?
Dwight Eisenhower once spoke of a military-industrial complex. Have we built up a marijuana prohibition complex?
The real war on marijuana didn't start until 1972. And President Nixon said, it's all the Jews smoking pot. And he really said that.
When Nixon got into this with his war on drugs, he had things that he wanted to do. He had an agenda.
A lot of the information that was kept and warehoused in the Library of Congress and also at major universities was actually recalled and destroyed. The Nixon report that came out through his administration was called the Schaefer Report. It was by a Republican governor, and when he studied it and gave an answer, you can pick this report up, pick up any page, open it, and if you actually have experience with cannabis, you'll realize they're telling the truth.
And then when it came back saying that marijuana was essentially harmless, he totally ignored it, so we're going to launch a war on drugs anyways.
Didn't even print as many copies that Congress and the House would have been able to see.
1970, beginning of the war on drugs. 76 New Jersey troopers became detectives. I was one of them. They designated 1/3 of us as undercover. I happen to fall in that 1/3. That's where I spent the next 14 years of my life. What we were targeted on was the pot smokers. There was a very good reason we were targeted on pot smokers. Most of them were protesting against the Vietnam War. Now, if you could arrest that whole group of people because they were smoking pot, you didn't have to have a Vietnam War protest, which Mr. Nixon thought was a pretty good idea.
So when President Nixon declared the civil war that we're living in right now, the drug war, in 1972, it was really a war on marijuana.
It really didn't kick in until the 80s when Reagan, took over his presidency of the U.S.
Ronald Reagan, he said, these young people, they get together, they read books, they smoke marijuana, and they talk. Like these three elements were a recipe for disaster.
How do I feel about legalizing marijuana? Am I for it or against it? I am totally against legalizing marijuana.
And make no mistake, in the U.S. government, the focus of their war on drugs is cannabis. The focus of their rhetoric is cannabis.
It's certainly used as a poster child for all drugs. When you see an ad for drugs, it's always the marijuana leaf that goes up.
It's almost like a religious jihad, more powerful than going for the gusto.
causes people to think. When people think, they question. They question things like, say, the war in Vietnam, or race separation of blacks and whites like they did in the 30s.